Imagine a train made of 46 cars, stretching through the ruins of Europe, filled not with soldiers but with millions in stolen gold, diamonds, and the literal wedding rings of those who perished in the gas chambers. In 1945, as the Third Reich collapsed in flames, one man, Colonel Arpad Toldi, orchestrated a getaway with the plundered wealth of an entire community. This was the Hungarian Gold Train. But the mystery doesn't end with the Nazis. When the United States Army discovered the treasure in Austria, a new and darker chapter of greed began. From high-ranking American generals furnishing their private villas with stolen silver to the final auction of a community's soul in New York City, this is the true, documented archive of the greatest robbery the world almost forgot. No myths, no legends, just the cold, hard facts of the crime of the century. Welcome to the War Archives. By the spring of 1945, Adolf Hitler's dream of a 1,000-year Reich was not just dying, it was screaming as it burned. The Allied armies, having breached the Atlantic Wall at Normandy nearly 1 year earlier, were now plunging like a dagger into the black heart of Germany. In the east, the Soviet Red Army was raining steel upon Berlin. Inside his fortress bunker, a broken and defeated Adolf Hitler prepared for his final act: suicide. But as the leadership of the Nazi regime collapsed, a different kind of war was being waged in the shadows. It was a war of greed. While millions were dying, high-ranking German and Hungarian officers were orchestrating the greatest plundering operation in human history. They weren't just fleeing for their lives, they were fleeing with the stolen souls of their victims: gold, diamonds, and heirlooms taken from the pockets of those who had perished in the gas chambers. Among all the stories of Nazi loot, one stands out for its sheer audacity and mystery: the Hungarian Gold Train. This is the documented archive of a crime that the world almost forgot. To understand the Gold Train, we must first understand the people it was stolen from. The Jews of Hungary had once occupied a unique and vibrant position in Eastern Europe. In 1867, the Hungarian government had officially emancipated them, allowing a distinct minority to build a flourishing cultural and economic life. But this freedom was fragile. The Catholic Church and local nationalist groups often looked at this success with a jealous, cold eye. In 1938, just 1 year before the world went to war, the darkness returned. The government of Kalman Daranyi passed the first anti-Jewish laws. Suddenly, Jewish doctors and lawyers, men and women who had spent their lives serving their communities, were forbidden from working. They were stripped of their livelihoods, their arts, and eventually their dignity. By 1939, the second Jewish law tightened the noose. When the radical anti-Semitic Magyar government allowed the Nazi machine to seize control of the country, the situation turned from desperate to catastrophic. Hitler's final solution arrived in Hungary in the form of Colonel Adolf Eichmann. Under his cold, bureaucratic command, over 600,000 Hungarian Jews were rounded up and deported to the death camps. But before they were sent to the ovens, they were methodically stripped. Every ring, every fur coat, every gold tooth, and every hidden diamond was confiscated. This was not just a genocide. It was a massive, industrial-scale robbery. By the end of the war, while 200,000 Hungarian Jews miraculously remained alive, they were ghosts in their own land. Their jobs were gone, their homes were occupied, and their wealth was now in the hands of the fascist puppet government. As the Soviet Red Army approached Budapest in April 1944, the Hungarian officials didn't think about the defense of their country. They thought about the treasure. They hatched an audacious plan to smuggle millions of dollars worth of loot out of the country before the Soviets could claim it. The man chosen to lead this mission was a villain straight out of a nightmare: Colonel Arpad Toldi. Toldy was a high-ranking official in the Ministry of Occupation, a man who had literally written the manual for the Gendarmerie Police Training School. He was virulently anti-Semitic and a devoted servant of the Nazi cause. As the Commissioner of Jewish Affairs, he had personally overseen the seizure of Jewish property and the deportations of thousands. Toldy firmly believed that this stolen treasure, this blood gold, was the rightful property of the Hungarian government. He spent the summer and fall of 1944 preparing the cargo. He was meticulous. He knew that the train might be attacked from the air, so he divided the loot. The most valuable gold and jewels were loaded onto heavy trucks, while the rest was packed into the wooden cars of a massive train. Shortly before Christmas in 1944, the gold train began its journey into the heart of legend. It was a massive iron caravan. In total, the train consisted of 46 cars. 24 of those cars were filled to the ceiling with looted treasure. 15 cars were packed with police and selected army officers tasked with guarding the wealth. 7 cars carried miners, and several others were filled with foodstuffs to keep the crew alive. In total, 213 people were on board, including Toldy's own family. The train's first stop was the town of Zir, about 120 miles from Budapest. But Toldy wasn't satisfied with what he already had. He requisitioned army transports to go to the nearby Obanya Castle, where more Jewish gold and jewels had been hidden. He was a vacuum, sucking up every last gram of wealth from the landscape. A week later, the train arrived at Brenberg Banya. It stayed there for 92 days. This wasn't a rest stop, it was a sorting house. Under Toldy's watchful eye, the cargo was meticulously counted and categorized. The archives of the train's inventory are staggering. There were crates overflowing with precious stones. There were gold coins from every corner of Europe. There were thousands of gold watches, silver chalices, and mountains of expensive furs taken from women who were now ash. Each item was a story, a memory, and a life, now reduced to a line in Toldy's ledger. As the spring of 1945 arrived, the war was in its final weeks. Toldy became paranoid. He knew the Soviets were hunting him, and he knew the Allies were closing in from the west. As the train neared the Swiss border, Toldy began to sell off parts of the cargo, paying off guards and bribing civilians to ensure his own safety. But the ultimate betrayal was yet to come. On the night of March 30, 1945, Toldy decided to abandon the train and his subordinates. Taking his family, a few trusted aides, and the most valuable portion of the loot, he fled into the night. He left Laszlo Avar in charge of the remaining train, telling him he would meet them later. It was a lie. Toldy reached the border of Switzerland, but the Swiss government, sensing the wind had changed, refused to let him in. Desperate, the Nazi colonel turned to an old contact, SS officer Wilhelm Hottel. Hottel was a high-ranking intelligence officer who saw an opportunity in Toldy's desperation. The two men struck a deal in the shadows. Toldy gave Hottel 10% of his plunder. In exchange, Hottel promised to get Toldy false German passports and safe passage into Switzerland. Hottel worked with a conman named Friedrich Weston, who had connections with the American OSS, the precursor to the CIA. In the chaos of the war's end, these men traded blood-stained gold for new identities. By May 1945, as the German surrender was signed, Hottel and Weston disappeared into the fog of history, taking 4 crates of the most valuable jewels with them. While Toldy was fleeing, the main body of the gold train, now known as the Werfen train, was finally tracked down. On May 16, 1945, the train arrived in the city of Werfen, Austria. It sat there for 4 weeks until American intelligence operatives finally made contact. The men of the 430th Detachment of the Counterintelligence Corps, or CIC, based in Salzburg, took control. The arresting officer was Martin Himmler. When the Americans opened the doors of those 46 cars, they were stunned. They found 1,500 crates filled with silverware, watches, and jewelry. They found 5,200 Persian carpets rolled up like cordwood. They found massive stamp collections and fine china from the grandest homes of Hungary. Immediately, a new battle began, a battle for restitution. The Soviet Union, which now occupied Hungary, demanded that the loot be turned over to them. An international incident was brewing, but while the diplomats argued, the Americans were making their own decisions. History often paints the Allied forces as the pure liberators of Europe. But the Gold Train incident reveals a darker side of the victory. Greed is a universal language, and certain high-ranking American officers were quick to learn it. On July 13, 1945, Major General Henry Collins, the commander of the 42nd Infantry Division, did something unthinkable. He requisitioned items from the Gold Train for his own personal use. He didn't just take a souvenir, he furnished his private villa and his personal railcar with stolen Jewish wealth. His list included fine chinaware, silver liqueur and champagne glasses, 5 expensive rugs, 8 paintings, and 60 sets of bath towels and pillowcases. He lived like a king on the spoils of the Holocaust. Other officers followed his lead. Items from the train began to mysteriously appear in American PX stores, sold to ordinary soldiers as surplus. Post-war documents held in the Central Zionist Archives in Jerusalem tell a bitter story. One report from 1947 stated that local American authorities were doing everything to obstruct the investigation because they were using the Gold Train as a source for easily acquiring riches. In 1948, the United States officially decided the fate of the Gold Train. Secretary of State George C. Marshall sent a cable to Budapest. He claimed that the contents were unidentifiable as to owners and that returning them to Hungary was not feasible due to the territorial changes and the rise of the Iron Curtain. The surviving Hungarian Jews were devastated. They argued that these items belonged to their community, to the families of the dead. But their pleas fell on deaf ears. The American government gave the property to the Intergovernmental Committee for Refugees. Large amounts of the booty were shipped to New York City to be auctioned off. The first auction took place in June 1948 at the Park Bernay Galleries. Roughly $4 million in valuables were sold to the highest bidder, meaning the heirlooms of murdered families ended up on the mantles of wealthy New Yorkers. About $8 million was eventually sent to the Joint Distribution Committee and the Jewish Agency in Jerusalem. Over 1,000 paintings were handed to the Austrian government. By the time the dust settled, the Gold Train had been picked apart by bureaucrats, generals, and auctioneers. The property was never returned to its rightful owners. And what of the man who started it all? Arpad Toldi, the man at the top of the CAC's most wanted list for the destruction of Hungarian Jewry. Toldi was finally arrested in August 1945. But in one of the most baffling twists of the post-war era, he was released that November without any charges being filed. He had told a bogus story to a French officer named Colonel Henry Jung, claiming he was only protecting the gold from the Soviets. The trail of Arpad Toldi went cold. Some reports placed him in Innsbruck in 1947. Others said he had joined the French Foreign Legion or fled to the deserts of North Africa. He was never brought to justice for the 4,000 Jews he personally helped deport. He vanished, likely living off the diamonds he had stolen from the train during his double cross. The story of the Hungarian Gold Train is a testament to the fact that in the chaos of war, justice is often the first casualty. In October 1999, a United States government report concluded that the dispersal of the property was a failure of policy and morality. The Gold Train wasn't just a train, It was a rolling monument to the victims of the Holocaust. And yet, it was treated like a warehouse of abandoned goods by the very people who claimed to be the world's moral leaders. The blood gold of Hungary was never truly recovered. It was scattered across the globe, absorbed into bank accounts and private collections, leaving only a hollow space where a community's history used to be. If you found this archive of the Gold Train insightful, please support the channel by hitting the like button. Share this story so that the victims of this brazen theft are never forgotten. What is your perspective? Was the American decision to auction the loot a pragmatic necessity or a betrayal of the survivors? Let us know in the comments below. To continue exploring the deepest secrets of human conflict, subscribe to the War Archives and turn on the notification bell. Thank you for watching. Until next time, keep exploring the past.